Welcome to Get Into Market, the show about where your job is real, but your roles are negotiable. Here with John and our special guest, Rachel Stanley. Rachel, how are you doing?
Doing great. I'm very excited to be here.
This episode has been a long time coming, and it's something that I think like we've talked about in bits and pieces, John, over kind of the course of these episodes. But it's like there's, a number of reasons why people get into product marketing and product management, but we would be fooling ourselves if there's not like a compensation component that goes into sort of why folks get into this specific field. We'll talk about it, I guess, as we get into the episode. But it's a huge consideration for everybody at any time in their careers thinking through like, should I stay here? Am I getting the compensation that I need for the things that I want to be doing? Should I jump? Should I try to get a promotion? Like, what should my path really look like? What's going to make the most sense for me? And so I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think we've all been through a number of different situations. We can kind of talk through about what pushed us one way or the other. But this is going to be a good talk. Like, there's a lot of like the Product Marketing Alliance, I think, puts out a salary report every year. It's kind of interesting going through that this year with some of the data they had because some of it did seem a little bit sparse, but at like a state level. But at any rate, it's a huge thing. I think it's largely on most people's minds a good chunk of the time, except for Rachel, who I know, like, what is it? It's not even in your top 10 for why you would think about like a new role or anything. It's way down
No.
there. But for
Yeah.
other people, maybe it's a little more important. So
Well,
I think we have
is that
we have a
true,
lot to cover
Rachel?
there.
Like, is that what got you into PMM? Well, maybe introduce yourself and then I'll ask
Ye-
that.
Yeah. Great question. Or great point. I'm Rachel Stanley. I am a portfolio product marketing manager at Red Hat. And yeah, to your question, John, I have a background in public relations. I moved into Red Hat and worked in more of a content capacity. When I was doing that, I was writing, editing, but I was more on the marketing side, like
Hmm,
the traditional corporate marketing
sure.
side, and doing like executive communications and things like that. And because Red Hat, as many organizations, are often reorging, we had people who moved more into product marketing functions, even though they were not really necessarily trained to do that or sought out to
Yeah.
do that. And I will say that those conversations were illuminating
Hmm,
in what salary bands looked like
yeah.
and what things like RSUs and stock and bonus look like.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I felt an urge to move roles after I'd been in my role for about 2 years. And product marketing was not the first role that I looked at, but it was something that I sort of uncovered. And as with so many jobs, like it has changed a lot since I've been in it. But that was one of the things that I said, this is a lot different from what I'm currently experiencing
Yeah. Yeah. And at a
compensation
minimum, you're like
wise.
looking at making a change is going to be hard. All change is difficult and et cetera. And then you're like, but that's a big reason, to
Yeah.
motivate the change. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, I don't know when this really was. I moved roles at the end of 2020.
Hmm.
And so I was listening to a podcast about what economist was talking about. The Great Resignation was like
Hmm.
the hot labor summer.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That was maybe like 2021. But I feel like that also played a part in this too,
Yeah.
right? That was a
Yeah.
very different moment than the current moment that we are in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. One of the things I thought we could start the conversation with is like, what are the components of compensation these days? And I guess we'll speak mostly from like a tech perspective, but like, what are all the pieces and what should you be thinking about as you're like, let's say evaluating a new org or just kind of thinking, poking around where you might want to try to get within your current org. And so let's go through that. So I think at a baseline, no matter where your role is, you'll have whatever your base level compensation is. And then I think the second most common thing would be obviously the benefits, which we'll get into. But the other
Hmm.
piece that was probably more variable and fluxes between orgs is how bonuses are structured.
Hmm.
So there's that. And then the additional piece on top of that would be like equity, RSUs, whatever
Hmm.
type of company it is and how they issue those. Let's start with salary. So I think one of the things that I wanted to ask here is, to what extent have you all worked at companies where you've known sort of what the band is for your role?
I can start and say, when I first started in product marketing, that was not clear at Red Hat, but I think it was 2022 maybe was when we came out with pay transparency. I will say that that made it clear for everyone, just at least for your own salary band. But I also, it depends on your manager. My manager at the time when I first started in my new role was very transparent about my range was. I think I
Huh.
asked maybe and said, can you give me any idea? And he was one to say, hey, here's specifically beginning, midpoint, and end point. I know that not all managers will do that, but that was something that helped me tremendously to realize at the time that I was not really
Hmm.
in band, especially when I made an internal move. And that was something that I made up for.
I will say that's rare where a manager goes out of their way to kind of provide transparency. Like you're really at the whim of that particular manager. I don't think there's a whole lot of
Yeah,
consistency
that's
there
fair.
for folks. John, what
Yeah,
about you?
U.S. based, yeah, likely not. I mean, like international, it's required. That they have to be. Those, those bands are public, and that stuff has got to be there. So at least U.S. It hasn't
Yeah.
been the standard. It hasn't been much for particularly just that part of the four base. The kind of those four what things make up your comp. The base, those bands hasn't been very
Yeah.
widely known.
I'll say though, Nate, don't you think that I think at the time, especially, and what you're saying is true, but I do feel like most companies now, when I look at jobs in tech with what we're talking about, do show a band. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
Legally, if they're posting the job, I think in California, New York, and maybe there's another state, I think they have
Colorado,
to.
maybe.
Colorado, yeah. And I do think it is a little more common. It is interesting too now, like the buckets of regions that they'll put folks in, like, because ours, I think, is like the lowest. You've got like LA, New York, whatever. But then I think Austin and those types of cities
Hmm.
fall into that second band, and then ours is like the third, even though it's
Or,
kind of
yeah.
unfair because we do have like higher cost of living than like whatever,
Yeah.
Nebraska or someplace like
Yeah.
that.
And to be clear, I do know that sometimes those ranges can be very, very silly.
And
If it
yeah,
says it's
huge.
required, it's like 90K to 750, and you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
well, I'm
Well,
somewhere in between there.
yeah.
I remember
699.
working through like in that summer of the Great Resignation, wherever that was a big deal where as teams were moving more remote and then people would move and then ask for adjustments to cost of living.
Yeah.
And it was a tough thing because there wasn't this baseline anymore of here is cost of living for that area so that people were making about the same kind of your buying power is the same in each of those regions. So that made a really sticky conversation. Like whether or not people are transparent with the bands, that regionality just went away completely and I think we were unprepared for how to manage that and what to do with it. I mean, at least I was. I
Yeah.
think our HR team was like, well,
I mean, the
freaked
world's
out.
changed a ton even since then too on like
Sure.
companies' flexibility around
Hmm.
how they're willing to deal with like just remote work generally and how they compensate.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
also hard too is I don't know if y'all have seen this, but I have looked at roles where there is a band that, again, to Nate's point, maybe has to be there. But a lot of times, hiring managers, that is the band, but they do not have anywhere near the top of that band
Oh yeah,
to
yeah.
offer for a role. And so I think
Sure.
that is also what's challenging is that sometimes people feel like that's not transparent, but it's like the hiring manager just only got,
Right. And
certain amount
credit to the
approved.
recruiters who are just transparent about where they are in terms of what's available. 'Cause I think that helps earlier in the
Hmm.
conversation where
Hmm.
you're close as it is with the range. One of the things I want to talk about when we're talking about base salary is just kind of like a rough sketch of what someone could anticipate based on their leveling, which is especially like if you're just at like the above associate level, so you're PMM or senior PMM in that like whatever three-ish range. If you grade it by levels, usually I'll speak to the PMM side. Rachel, curious to hear what you think, but I think roughly you would be somewhere in like you'd be close to six figures, if not over six figures at that level, depending on where you live. John, what about PMs?
Yeah. Same. I don't think the
Yeah.
bands are all that different.
I think PM's like a tick higher. I feel like that's fair. In most orgs I've worked at, I feel like you guys
It's
have
so
like a
variable.
10%. I've never
I don't,
worked somewhere where I think PMs make less than PMMs though for the same level.
yeah. I mean, PM means so many different things to different places that it's not as direct and akin. At least where I'm at now, our responsibilities on the PM teams are much higher than even just kind of standard PM groups that I find myself in, just kind of chit chatting about the art and listen to me, the discipline, the job of being a PM, where it's not necessarily a PM is a PM is a PM, where the core functions of that role are the same. I mean, even here, our PMs are more like a general manager training type thing. You own the business and you have a P&L. PMs at previous places I've talked to, even people that I've worked with before, it's more of like a base level product owner. And so
Mm,
that it makes it really
Hmm.
hard to say, "Oh, all PMs make more than PMMs." I don't know that that
Hmm.
comparison is fair or true.
okay. Well, I'll just say at places I've worked, I feel like PMs sit just a little bit above comp wise where a PMM sits, and PMMs tend to sit just a tick higher than like other parts of the marketing org. I feel like, not like a crazy amount, but probably like somewhere in like the 5 to 10% range difference between those three roles across each. What do you think? Well, I mean, Rachel, you did that move, so
Yeah. I would say that's accurate. I feel like it's almost hard to talk about grading right now because it seems like so many jobs that people are coming into and that teams are hiring for are early talent. And so it's
yeah,
almost like it's hard to like almost look at that right now. But
right.
I think that that sounds right. And I know that there are people that are hiring for more than just, doing intern conversions, which is what a lot of organizations are doing.
But we should say that's
Um,
interesting too, because it kind of flies in the face of a lot of the LinkedIn stuff around, or even just like general media stuff around how AI is displacing entry level work. Like in the
mm,
PMM side, like I feel like there's more opportunities for entry level folks than there are for folks that have more experience.
I would definitely say that's true. It's hard to say. Obviously, I have what is 2026. I have been in PMM for almost 6 years. And so it's hard to say for sure, but it feels like, especially right now, that that is the case.
That
Mm.
there's more opportunity for entry level than principal, senior, that sort of thing. I mean, like that's generally going to be true. You don't need as many principals as you need entry level PMMs, but like that ratio is becoming more heavy towards the entry level side.
I see it that way. And I wonder if
Huh.
it is part of I'm being in an organization that has very strong retention.
Mm.
I wonder if we already skew a bit in the
Yeah.
way of
Sure.
people that have been there for a long time. And so when those people leave or are laid off or fired in some capacity, that there is a push for
Mm.
early talent. But I will
Mm.
say anecdotally, like
I
the
would
people
say
that I'm
a
seeing,
mandate. Yeah.
well, yeah, yeah. And anecdotally, the people that I'm seeing hired are primarily early talent.
Yeah. Like
I am
Wow.
level twos.
surprised when I see someone hired who is not like a level 2 or level.
Mm.
There have been some level 3s, but in some cases those are lateral moves from elsewhere in the organization, and
Mm.
there's no compensation change even associated with the
Yeah.
move.
Well,
Which we
the
I
should talk
think
about too, yeah. Because
yeah.
lateral moves is where a lot of people I think come into PMM or have historically. I would think the same for PM, right? Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
know I've talked to lots of PMs who've had, past roles in sales and solutions engineers, and sort of things. I think there's two reasons that folks might do that move. And one is they might be willing to trade down because of the stability of getting away from more variable comp. So like I know
Mm,
I've seen folks from like sales orgs in particular move into like PM, occasionally PMM, but it seems like they tend to
Mm.
move more into like the PM side. It's a different work cycle and your income can vary a lot more. And some of they just like the consistency of knowing like what your salary is going to be more consistently. And then the other one is if you are in like a marketing role, I think the attractiveness is in the increase in pay that you
Mm.
might get,
Mm.
even if at the time of the move, like, because this happened to me when I moved into PMM, is I made the same, but my potential then is much higher because the set of skills, especially at that time, was
mhm.
in more demand anyways. So like you
Mm.
have higher, your ceiling is a lot higher. I feel like if you move out of like some of the traditional corporate marketing roles.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Did
and
generally
not
you?
to
move in.
Yeah.
I was gonna say not to make this too PMM focused because John is here too, but I would agree with that. Like when the jump that I made to, I think we could talk about lateral as in like just a change, title or not title. Yeah, I guess title and grade are the same. But
Mm.
yeah, my compensation change in moving to PMM was not high, but it is in the 3 to 4 years that happened after that, and then of
Yeah.
course probably the rest of my career. That I will say I was surprised at when your bands are higher, you
Mhm.
have more, you have more opportunity there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
now's the
generally
part
the
of the
same.
episode where we ask how much John makes.
Well, one of the things that as you're talking, I think is really interesting. And I don't know if this is the same, if this is specifically a PM thing, but so I like this breakdown of the 4 different types of comp, like your whole comp package. We'll say benefits are the same. Generally speaking, every employee gets the same benefit. So it's good stuff to know. There's an element of that where like, there's a lot to be said as you jump organization to organization to really spend the time looking at the benefits.
Interesting too to think about because I think John, what you're saying is right about benefits, right? By and large, but
Probably
I
the
think
law.
about it too. What'd you say?
It's probably the law. Like, I don't think,
Yeah, yeah.
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 Well, but like I know, and if I die, it's like basically 2x your income is what you get for
Mm.
life insurance at
Mhm.
my organization. But that is going to be a lot more than someone else who makes a lot less than I do.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so that's like baked in. Obviously, that's not, quite what
And
we're
it's
talking
capped
about.
too,
But
right? Because that's every time I've had that, it's
it's a good
also got a
question.
cap.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a
probably
high
I
true.
cap, but
I haven't made enough to hit the cap. Damn it. Yeah.
John's
Even
lying. He's been at the
e
cap forever.
even
Yeah.
still, like that benefits part. I mean, like when the open enrollment happened in the U.S., at least this year, like it's sent off a flurry of texts between buddies, like, "Hey, did yours go up? What's happened to yours?" And just kind of chatting. So it's becoming more kind of a part of the overall conversation. Like the effect on cash flow is the
Mm.
important part to
Mhm.
consider. It's not just your overall band and what you're making money wise, but just like cash flow. A friend moved up in role, moved organizations, went down in cash flow and healthcare alone. That was it. So
I
just
mean,
like,
it does have material effects. The interesting
yeah.
thing I think is like, well, often it'll now come up in interviews going
Mm,
forward because there was a long period of time where I feel like my premium or the part that I had to pay out of my
mhm,
paycheck didn't really change unless I changed jobs.
mhm,
And now I think at the last couple places I've had, I mean, they haven't been like huge, but they have changed year over year. And so people might ask in the same way that bonuses get asked about, is like how much was the change in like the health insurance? What are you anticipating maybe for the future year? Because
mm,
it does materially affect the check that you get
yeah.
whenever
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
pay period is.
Kind of going back to, as you're looking at jobs, the different four types, and you said, how much do you make? Do you think in PMM, people are motivated by the opportunity of stock options of RSUs? Like that feels like a very core PMM thing. I'll speak for myself.
Mm.
For me, one of the things I like about the role is sometimes it can be super high stress. Sometimes it can be high demand. And I might even, and I've actually done this, taken a lower salary for a higher opportunity, dollars and cents through
Mm.
the options and through that stuff. Like if I'm successful in what I do, the upside is greater. Is that
Mm.
as much a part of your deciding and kind of analysis of comp as it has been for me, for you two?
Yeah, Rachel, do you want to answer that
Uh,
first?
I was going to say Nate definitely has more experience with that because I have actually never been external for a PMM role.
Mm,
And so I transparently was not even aware of how much stock that I would be getting when I came into this.
yeah.
And then it became clear. I would say that it would be John, but I personally am a little, I think when we work, I never worked there, but we work has me a little shook about like
Yeah.
working for a startup like that. But I do think
Yeah.
that would be a motivating factor for me so long as I'm not taking a huge pay cut
Right.
in terms of base pay. That
Yep.
would be interesting to me.
John,
Mhm.
I'm curious, like how much what was your risk for dilution?
What do you mean?
Like, were they continually like expanding their shares and potentially
No.
devaluing? No.
No, no. Yeah, low risk for delusion there. And it was really like, yeah, one of the things is just kind of like in my own ethos for managing our finances. All the options, all that stuff is fake. It's not real until it's cash in your hand. And so we really just kind of budget off of that kind of salary band. And so everything there feels
Mhm.
opportunistic. So there's just a bit of my own personality there too, where even if it was, at risk of being diluted or anything there, a little high risk, high reward, but I didn't feel much risk in those ones. It was okay.
Yeah. On the equity RSUs piece, I think one of the things that this also varies a lot across orgs, and I don't think as far as like pay transparency goes, like that's one piece around comp for set base salary. There's usually not a ton of transparency around how they manage who gets what from like an
Yeah.
equity
Here's our
disbursement
cap
point of
table.
view. Yeah, it's like you don't know who all is getting it. You don't know how much they're getting. You don't really know how much you're getting compared to other people. So it seems like where there has been, I think, a lot of progress made in terms of like, oh, we're gonna share like what this is what the band looks like for your level for salary. Like, there's not a similar push around like because I think it's so discretionary around retention. Like, so much of it factors into like how they're thinking about retention that they don't really want to be bound to like, hey,
Mm,
Mhm.
transparency around it, but it is interesting that like that transparency never doesn't really exist.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Even
it's even more level dependent, I feel like, for when they
even
issue
in
it.
my experience, like even on one team,
Yeah.
there does not seem to be a lot of anyone talking about it because everyone's experience is widely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was at a sales kickoff. This is like a random story, but then also just kind of like to that. In my head, RSUs are 100% retention. That is the only value that they have. Like you're just paying that money is retention. And it can work both ways. It's probably the end of this story. Like you can end up retaining good and bad. And it wasn't overt, but I was at a sales kickoff and watched someone become a millionaire. Like I watched them get
Yeah.
granted $1 million. Like I can't remember what the time frame was, but at the projected time frame, what they got that night was worth $1 million. And I just remember sitting like, to the transparency, I didn't become a millionaire. Like that didn't happen. Then you get into like kind of, did I work harder than that? But the person stuff, you get all grumpy or whatever. And then I like, oh, they just want to make sure they don't go away. And that person deserved every bit of accolades they got for the work that they did, and like 100%. But I just remember a
Your
million.
feelings are valid, John. Your
It was
feelings are valid.
wild. It was wild. I'm really curious about this. So I've worked PE twice here. This is PE backed. I've had a little bit of experience before in PE. And more so here than before, it was open conversation for how long the runway is. Maybe not totally open, but just like, hey, we're in this grind. The exit is X amount of time away. And so there's a value that I was like, that's actually kind of interesting, especially as you look at it kind of like total comp and kind of what am I going to get paid for this effort? That conversation is very prescient. Like we talk about it regularly enough. And it doesn't totally motivate me because it kind of like I was saying before, it's not real till it's real. It's just kind of funny money. And also, I don't know that I buy this is the only place that you have that opportunity, which it's kind of based on that assumption. But have either of you had that where it's just open conversation to like, hey, if we do this, this, and this is how much money comes in. Maybe not the amount, but just that this exit triggers a windfall of any level for individuals?
A little not super transparent. Timeline. Yeah.
I will say, John, I think that's interesting because I think, and I have not been in that experience. I have not been motivated by that. I am very much like, I want to see what we're working with here and now. And if it's our vesting events are in April and October. April and October is okay twice a year, whatever. But I'm kind of like, let me see that now.
This is a personal question, and I know we just met Rachel, but let's do that. So there's all this stuff around comp where the fastest way, and not just playing on what you just said, where like, hey, the fastest way to make more money is to switch organizations. Like there's just no two ways around that.
Yeah.
I've been on this side. Like I was at a company for 12 years. I very much so could have made more money by going elsewhere, all kinds of stuff we could talk about there. But either way, you haven't. You've been there for a while, been doing that, relatively happy, I would imagine, and kind of doing that. But if the pay is the big thing and the math works out where moving is the way to get more take-home pay, what's the other factor in the equation for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not too personal. I think for me, it was...
crying. I don't want to talk about it.
There's a lot of my personal life, John.
Yeah.
I think that the big thing for me was I felt like I moved into PMM. And then it was over really the next, I'll say maybe 2 years that, essentially like we went through pay transparency. And so there were adjustments given. When I consider it now, most of the time, even if I took on a big team, it was not meeting my current compensation. Again, I don't think that I could do that. I could not come, take that job today and do that. And so it's been something I've thought about, but yeah, that's where it's this position I'm in now.
Let's dig into that for a moment, because I do feel like that's a thing that some people have to think through, which is there is the comp piece, right? So one of the trade-offs we talk about, like, because you're at an org right now, Rachel, that's like 20,000 people. And so there's like a certain stability there to that size of org. There's different pay scale, I think, than some smaller organizations. But there's a trade-off to be made that kind of exists outside of compensation, or at least base salary, which is, it's like, what do you want in your career? Like, do you want that stability? Like, I see roles at bigger companies, but the pressures are a little different, right? Because you're not making the same comp as someone who does have to navigate that. Like, that's a serious thing to consider. At the same time, like, some people, it might be worth it to trade for equal comp because they want that scope and purview, and they want to be able to drive things like a certain way, or they feel like that's what makes them happy in a role. And so I do think that's something a lot of folks have to think about depending on where you are in your career.
I think that's a totally fair trade-off, first, to be clear, because I think that I also was kind of thrust into more of a management, although I'm not managing people, role a little under 2 years ago, because we had some organizational changes. Some people went out on leave, etc. And so I am taking a leadership role in that way that is not a full substitute, but I feel like I own something more than I used to, and that's part of it. But I think also part of my movement to PMM when I did this a couple of years ago, I was trying to look ahead, and that's what I'm trying to do,
Mhm.
especially with this AI stuff. And so that
Mhm.
has been a conversation. And when, I have looked at other roles, that is something I think about where I probably cannot be an individual contributor forever. So even if I
Yeah.
am happy with what I'm currently doing, there is a bit of now.
Yeah.
You could also argue, and I've seen this a lot, that people who are strong individual contributors eventually just get moved into management roles, even if it
Peter
was not
Principle.
something. What'd you say?
We should talk about that, John. John shared this thing about Peter Principle, which is that basically when like you're competent at your level, so you get promoted because people are saying like, oh, hey, this person's really good at this thing. And then eventually you reach a point where you get
Mm,
promoted into an area where you have zero competency and can't really fulfill the needs of the role, but you stay there anyways because they've already promoted you into that. And so just this thing, eventually you just like escalate into failure through no real fault of your own, other than just like doing a good job up to the point where you just kind of reach whatever your limits and capabilities are. But so yeah, it sounds like that's what we do to
That's my career
IC
progression.
sometimes.
That's what
yeah.
I say when
Yeah.
people say, "How did you get into what you're doing now?" I just say Peter Principle, and they're like, "Yeah, that tracks."
Well, this is why your middle name is Peter.
There's a joke that somebody sent me the other day. It's a coffee cup you can get that says something like, "I accidentally got promoted and it ruined my life." But just
Mhm.
to that idea of like, "Oh, now I suck at this," or "I
Yeah.
don't like it," and yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
I think too, like, I think that there's a part of this. I know you both are parents as well. That you're sort of like, what kind of moment am I in my life? Like, there's a part of me having a young child that I have a trouble also envisioning managing people. I know those are
Mhm.
different things, and so that has been part of my calculus
No, John puts people in timeout all the time
as
on
It's
his
not
well.
that
team.
different.
If they don't eat vegetables, they get punished.
They get-
Yeah, at team lunches.
Clean
So
Play Club. Sorry,
yeah.
Rachel. We're professionals. You were saying something
Oh,
probably
that's fine. No,
helpful.
I mean, but like, hopefully, come to terms with this recently, but hopefully, we have long careers, and when I do not have a young child at home, maybe I would feel differently.
The other thing kind of on that same thing, there's the progression. So like let's say you're IC, you can make more as you still progress in the ICs. And there's nothing wrong with staying in IC. Like I think maybe too many people aspire to
Mm,
management roles and then find out they don't like it. There's a lot of value in, I think, like, because you do own stuff. Like the idea that as an IC you don't own and lead things, I
Mm.
think is a misnomer. And especially as you go and progress in IC roles. So I think there's like kind of a misunderstanding of that, especially if you're just haven't seen, experienced that in your career, but that does definitely happen. But also I think if you were to make a move to like a director level role, that does open up a higher ceiling comp wise
mhm.
period, like because then you're opening up to like higher level roles even at larger orgs. And so it just kind of like sets you on potentially a different trajectory comp wise there too.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
The other thing that I thought we'd talk about is bonuses. Oh, wait, I did have another question, which was, John, you talked about benefits and the variability there. Would you not take a role because of the health insurance cost?
How about this? I feel like I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I really love that part of it. Just, like go out, build, make something, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I am specifically, I'd say, scared of going out on my own and doing something because of
Mhm.
healthcare. I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's a part of it where like, do I actually know how that structure would work? How would ACA cover me? What does that look like? I mean, there's like the tactics of it. I just don't know that much about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it stopped me from doing some of those things that I've been really, excited about, I suppose. And I've been able to exercise similar muscle with the protection of healthcare
Yeah.
inside a corporate environment. So that part's helpful. It would have to be pretty egregious of a price difference for me to not take a role because of healthcare itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't ask me this, Nate, but I will say what's interesting
Can we talk
is
about me again?
what's interesting is that I would think it just depends on, like, if they're going to offer John a ton more money, then hey, sure, he can pay
Sure.
for his healthcare in that way. But it's like
So you would think about
most,
like if there was a big delta between like what you would be paying and what your comp would look like, it would be part of the decision making process for you.
say for me, but again, if they're going to pay me more,
Is
then
it just the cost or is it the coverage, the quality of the coverage too?
good question. I am in a high deductible plan, so I don't pay a
Yeah.
ton, but coverage is not
Yeah.
great. But I'm like, well, I want to know what your out-of-pocket max is. So
Right.
it's maybe less about coverage and more about like, okay, what's the max I'm going to pay with my out-of-pocket max?
Yeah.
But of course, like a company that does not have as good a healthcare is probably not also just going to offer you buku money. So it's a little bit of like
oh, sure.
Is my question valid? But that would be the way I would think about it.
Yeah.
I'm telling John what to do. Go be an entrepreneur. Don't worry about healthcare. It's fine.
It's gonna be fine.
Subsidies are always the same every year, John. There's no reason not to think about the marketplace.
This is America. We care about people.
Bonuses, would that affect your decision making?
I think on paper I want to say no, but I want, that opportunity there. So meaning there's probably a bit of me that's a hypocrite in saying it's not real until it's real. But if someone says, hey, there's a 75%
Sell me that bridge.
bonus. Yeah. Then I'd be like, oh, that's a different conversation. I don't think I'd be able to, I would have a hard time fighting against that. I'd probably end up, counting that as real money, even though it's not real money for sure.
What about you?
It's hard for, I would say it would factor in less for me, but in a new role, I feel like in my current role, there is a lot of management makes good on their promise that if I am overperforming, then my bonus will reflect that. But everybody knows that not all managers do that, and not all organizations are going to be performing well just because you as an individual are going to be performing well. I'm kind of with John, where on a personal side, I don't factor that in. It's just like when I get my bonus, I'm like, okay, here's how I'm allocating it. But I will say at my organization, we have quarterly bonuses, and that sort of, when I think about it, impacts.
Which is crazy. Like, there are very few companies that do that, but it is. Nice. It's nice to you because you like mitigate your risk a little bit on how the year-end numbers shake out. Yeah. At the same time, like you could end up like there is a little risk the other way where you could have like at a year's level gotten the full bonus, but then you missed a quarter because the quarter missed. But
True. Yeah. And I think individually, and it depends on what you're looking at, but I'm a very aggressive individual investor. And so I take that, and it's the same thing I do with my RSUs, but like I take it and immediately I'm investing it. I don't keep like hold RSUs or anything.
That's what I was wondering.
And so for
straight
me,
into
it's
Tesla.
Like, right, exactly. Yeah. Or whatever his AI company is now. Yeah.
It's like the if you get an annual windfall of your bonus, right? Let's say your bonus $10,000. $10,000's a lot of money. Then you're like, I'm going to pay off a big debt. So you can kind of like, at least that's what we've done, is just like really motivated us to go after it, to then go after these big things. Getting it quarterly, it didn't change your behavior. You like the same thing. I do kind of the same thing.
It's the same thing. I feel like sometimes, and I sometimes do this with a stock, like things that are annual, like from my son's 529, we're like, okay, let's just, if I can just go ahead and fund this, what we fund it for the year, or whatever that looks like. Or, I mean, sometimes it's like we've just paid something, and so we're like, oh, okay, we're just replenishing our emergency fund, whatever. But I feel like it just, I am kind of boring with personal finance where I don't get very excited about it. And I'm just like, okay, what's the most practical? Should I put it in the brokerage account or do whatever? And then I'm just a long-term like index fund, total market fund.
VT Sachs for life.
John, is your bonus only 10,000? Because I have some news for you, buddy. You've been shortchanged.
Maybe we should talk about more transparent compensation.
So one of the things I think is really key to this, and I know you and I, John, if we've talked about this a little bit, is like nobody's going to get you your raise or promotion or, you're not going to get an external job, certainly, unless you're the impetus for it. And so the fact that people struggle with it kind of at all levels, and no matter how long they've been working, sometimes it's just a personality thing, but like your manager is not just going to run out and get you that promotion or that raise. It's not their priority list. And they've got other stuff they're working on. So you have to be willing to flag that for them. And one of the things I think you can do is to like help structure that conversation is like, what do I need to do for you to be able to like make the case for me? At some point, they're going to have to make that case to somebody. I don't care like what level they're at. Usually there's an approval process, even if it sits lower, but even at the higher levels, right? Like they've got to take that comp and like make a case for it.
Yeah. They have a budget to balance.
C-level. That includes C-level. Like I know that happens. So you've got to be able to make a case for how what you do adds value to the organization and helps deliver on the organization's goals and connect that back to the work you're doing. just being passive to that process, you're not going to get anywhere.
Funny, you've probably had this, Rachel, but there's that whole thing of like, oh, they could go off and, shout for an offer and then come back and force you to do it. For all the times I've had a conversation, that's happened to me 0 times, not once. That's actually not true. One time somebody did, but it's not a thing that's happened regularly with the teams that I've led and the number of people over time. So I was thinking through how would I want someone to start that conversation? Someone who has that conversation 6 months before the pay cycle, all that sort of thing, it puts it a little bit on the leader to solve that for them and like walk that out, or even have the conversation say, hey, I don't think you're ready for that yet, but it sounds like one of the things that's helpful for you is the money side. Like that I can do. You just kind of give some method and lever of conversation with them.
Yeah. Rachel, have you ever had that conversation with your manager?
Wait, Rachel, did you report to Nate? Is there a dynamic here that I don't know about?
No.
Okay.
Nate actually reported to me. He was my intern.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Intern Nate.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
New nickname.
I am the squeaky wheel. Like I have these conversations early and often.
Rachel's like, I'm not going to this one-on-one unless comp is part of the discussion.
Yeah, unless.
Did you really say that?
And no, but I have. And that's what I have a lot of thoughts about this. I have done these like ladders where they show like, here's what a level 4, I'm a level 4. Here's what level 4 does. Here's what level 5 is. And I will like track each thing and say, hey, here's what we're tracking on. And like, this is what I'm doing to work towards that thing that we both agreed, John, you're my manager, that you agreed like I needed to work on in order to do this. But I think, and this has been a big thing at my organization, is just the business needs. So for me, there is a part of a promotion that would give me a little bit more political capital to get the stuff that I need to get done.
Oh.
And so that is a bit of it with me too, where I'm saying, hey, I am performing in this way. And also, my job as my boss's report is to make their lives easier and to do what I need to do. And I can better do that if we can promote me. A mentor told me this early in my career that those skip level conversations, or even for me, like a skip level, are so important when you get to those levels. And those people are going to be that you don't want them to say, hey, who is Rachel? Who are we promoting?
Right.
You want them to know who you are.
Visibility matters, I think, is like, yeah, it really does. The other thing I was going to ask you, Rachel, was there's a little bit of that I feel like is just your personality, but I feel like there's also some of that is your experience factoring into your willingness to do that as well.
Yes, I don't know if this is what you're saying, but to me, it feels like it has made an impact for me to use the B ladder to talk about it early and often. And just to say that I'm serious about my job and I'm serious about being here. And part of me being serious about being here is that I want to move on to the next role and I want to, move along in my career. I want to be here for a long time. And so I'm happy to do that, but I want to show progression in that. But I talk to my manager a lot about, long-term investing and things like that. And so if there's a situation where I can either get you more RSUs and not much of a pay increase, or I can get you a small pay increase, but like no bonus or no stock, then they're going to be able to better know what I would want in that situation. Obviously, it's not always an if then, but since organizations right now are being more cautious about what they're giving to associates in terms of both pay increase and stock options, it helps for your manager to know. But I think them knowing what matters to you.
You just kick across your Christmas list to them.
Go.
Exactly.
But it underscores the point, though, that like none of that is stuff your manager knows or cares about unless you surface it. And so it's like, and I say this as someone who manages folks too, and I know John's in this situation as well. Like you just got other stuff. You have other commitments to the business, and it is maybe unfortunate, but it's a smaller portion of what you think about on a day-to-day basis is retention specific to like comp and leveling, unless that employee is bringing it up. And it's your job as that employee to make known that like what's key to your retention. Let your manager know what the keys to your retention are. Because sometimes for some people, not Rachel, but it's like title rather than comp. And for other people, it's just a straight comp thing where they don't care. They might not even care about the title. There are people that really focus in on just what their comp could look like in the next performance review. And they aren't really concerned whether or not they level up to a new level if you can just make it work within their existing band.
There's that phrase, no one will care about your career as much as you. And I used to like hear that as this aggressive thing. You had to go out there and fight. And then it's like, no, it's kind of exactly what you're saying. Your leaders, let alone skip levels, there's so much going on through their heads. Like they just don't have the capacity for that.
Yeah.
And like, it just
And
is what it is.
they're not gold to it. Truthfully, like
Yeah.
I don't carry a retention number, right? So is it important to me? Yeah. Like, does it factor into your ability to like manage continuity? Yes. But do I carry a goal in my like in Workday for keeping X number of employees? I don't. So,
Well,
you
Nate,
have to
to
make
that
people care.
point, I mean, right now, and again, I think obviously you two have had a lot more changes in your career than I have at this point, but it's not like a lot of people are voluntarily leaving companies. And so at this point, as managers, you might feel like that is less of a risk. That may or may not be true,
Right.
but the job market is weird right now.
Lessons learned. Do you have one, John?
I do have a lesson learned. I saw this thing the other day, the 7 most famous laws in the world. And that's like, maybe the Peter Principle is on there. It's not. Parkinson's law. Do either of you know what Parkinson's law is? So Parkinson's law implies that if more time is given to complete a task, it'll likely consume that entire time. And so the lesson is like, oh, I learned that there's a phrase and a law, apparently one of the famous ones, for this thing that's so core to product management of like, I don't want to slip, because if I just say, well, we're going to be late, it's going to take a couple more days, we will consume every extra time frame we give people. And just knowing that there's a law or a rule or just a general known thing about that was kind of encouraging. Of like, all right, I'm not a crazy person for being like, we got to hit the dates, y'all, and kind of staying really rigid to, if we said we can do it based off a bunch of work within a time frame, we got to do it in the time frame, because if we give extra, we'll miss. Did you know about Parkinson's law? Have either of you heard of this?
No, I didn't. Nope.
You're welcome. You can use it.
I feel like I've heard of this. I've heard of this type of idea before, but I've not heard it called that.
Yeah. There's all kinds of them. Pareto principle is one of them, so it's in that realm.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Rachel, do you have a lesson learned as guest, putting on the spot?
I think my lesson learned is that from talking with you both, especially as people had different careers, have different roles right now, is to be better about assessing that day to day for myself. Because especially being in the same org for a long time, you don't have as many opportunities to say, what am I looking at in my career? Do I want to move into a director level role elsewhere, even if it's, a similar comp?
Yeah.
So maybe to spend more time assessing that, because this conversation has given me a lot of thought there.
Yeah.
People making life changes. It's not that big of a deal.
Mine is, there was an article on Apple News. It was from GQ that was about how people are starting to use LinkedIn more as a way to try to find dates. It's really funny to me, one, because like every day LinkedIn is increasingly seemingly more of a nightmare place from all of like the AI content people are posting there and just the nonsense that is. But then also, and I have seen people post about like getting direct messages that are very unwanted, but it's like, don't use LinkedIn for that. Like the odds that they would entertain or are desiring communication that like falls into that realm just seems super low.
Was this article saying that people were successfully using it in that way, or just that it
Fair
was
question.
The framing of the article is more frightening. It says, dating apps are dying. Is it time to try getting laid on LinkedIn?
My answer to that question is no, Nate. It is not.
I don't know much about the target audience for GQ, but in my head, there's a lot of Giga Chads that love some GQ. And so it feels very direct, like, hey, y'all, settle down on the LinkedIn messages, like find another avenue.
I just like how LinkedIn is now so like, here's what my divorce taught me about succession planning.
If we don't learn these lessons on LinkedIn, though, we won't ever learn them. So like, where else can we find this information?
I don't have any other social network other than LinkedIn, and I use it enough, a lot. And now I'm like, I got to quit my life. I got to do something different. I got to get off the internet.
That is another lesson learned for me, is that I think Nate is, John, I don't think you and I are connected yet, but Nate is like good about being on LinkedIn. I have not had a lot of LinkedIn activity in many years.
I did actually send you an invite. You just didn't respond.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Decline.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no wonder that's how I got a message from. And that it is something that is probably not on the top of any of our lists, but that is probably positive for a career.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that.
You can find new episodes of this show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts on Tuesdays. Rachel, thanks for joining the podcast. It was really good to have you on. We will have to do a follow-up on, I don't know, any other like C words we wanted to cover. We can.
I'll brainstorm.
I thought you said Sea World.
Nailing
we can
it
have
as
a whole
usual.
episode
John,
about
thanks.
SeaWorld.
Did you know that's where John's going for sales kickoff?
That's true. These are facts. SeaWorld, still a thing.
Oh,
Do you
that's
believe
true?
that?
We're gonna Free
That is
Willy.
true.
The
That's a
orcas
real
will
thing.
jump. You won't get $1 million in RSUs, but Free Willy will leap over you. And
It was like, where should we go to sales kickoff? We should probably go to SeaWorld.
And there's been no negative press or negative documentaries or anything about SeaWorld. So
They're totally clean.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
productischange.com, another place you can not only find more about the podcast here, but also meet other guests. Rachel, you'll be highlighted. One of the things we're trying to do with the site is highlight our guests. We know that's why everyone's listening, is to hear from you. So thank you, Rachel, for being on here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.